Before I elaborate a little bit on web governance, I just wanted to add my thanks to all of you for making the time and effort to be here with us. As the Chief Revenue Officer, you might find it odd, but I'll be the first to tell you that this is not a sales agenda'd event for us. Sincerely, we celebrate when you make connections that prevail beyond this event. And we hear about those stories all the time. Oh, I met so-and-so at your EDGE event, and we talk every other month, and we collaborate, and we share best practices. And so we sincerely hope that you forge those types of relationships. And if at any time there's feedback you can give any of us, I reiterate that we're open ears. We'd love to hear it. We're all about delivering a delightful experience. And so we're really grateful for your presence. We're grateful for your partnership. And your partnership has contributed to a lot of what I'm about to share in terms of what we've been about for the last 12 months. So to get going on that, let's talk a little bit about web governance. We just sent a few of our team members down to an event, a privacy event in San Diego. And the first thing that Jared White, our solution architect, commented to me on his return was, everybody's referring to web governance, but everybody has a different definition of what that means. And we couldn't agree more. We have our own definition of it. But when you came, for those of you who were here last year, in our very concluding session, we stood up here and we let you know that we were endeavoring ourselves on the cause of bringing definition and a little bit of structure, in our humble opinion, in our best effort, around web governance. We have been working with nearly 1,000 enterprises in the history of our company, helping them deal with matters of the complexity of this ever-changing landscape. It's been 15 plus years, and the complexity has just been mind-boggling. When you look at, and don't focus too much on the typos that ChatGPT generated for me in my beautiful artwork here, but when you think about, as we've been working with those enterprises, we've learned and we've observed a lot, and we've been working with the world's best companies. We have small demographic customers for sure, because if you have an interest and an ongoing concern about how your website is performing and how it's impacting your organization's objectives, then there's a place for a monitoring solution and platform like ObservePoint. But it happens that nearly half of the 100 largest organizations in the world are ObservePoint customers. The largest banks, the largest pharmaceutical companies, the largest travel and hospitality companies, et cetera. And we've observed through our experience with them this reality that sometimes they don't even know what they don't know, and it becomes really daunting to them to try and wrangle what is their web environment. Most companies operate with many, many different martech platforms on their website at any given time. And when you think back to that picture Kyle shared of John in his early days sitting behind a computer building Zions Bank's website or Ancestry's or some of his other clients, 30 years ago, you could probably find the individual at an organization that held all the keys to the kingdom with respect to their web environment. But today, that has grown to multiple different types of roles and responsibilities, and many, many people in each one of those responsibilities. Some of these enterprises deal with several hundred stakeholders in their web environment, and so hence the complexity. When we set out to try and tackle a discipline of web governance, we thought about it. We consulted with a handful of you in here. We worked with partners. We worked with some of our customers. We worked with even some of our prospective customers that don't even pay us any money yet. We wanted to know their take. We worked with modeling experts. And we specifically wanted to address a web governance model or framework that could help organizations tackle and affect change in their business outcomes, like customer retention and acquisition, conversion and purchasing, and these matters that really are why you have a web presence to begin with. What does your brand mean out there in the marketplace? And so we collaborated, and we got a lot of input. And it was really, really important for us, the way we wanted to build this, because you saw John's vision. We don't aspire to be a consulting company. We don't employ professional services overtly. We don't provide managed services. We want to be that expert platform that tells you what's going on. What is your website doing to your customers, as Dave iterated. We very humbly respect that this ecosystem is huge, and hence our partner ecosystem is so important for us, because an output of our web governance effort may point to needs to better implement your martech stack or whatever it might be, and that's not us. We wanted to have a governance model that was vendor agnostic, that was purposeful. We dealt with matters of complexity. We looked at regulations and risk, and how the web governance affects or resembles the strategy of an organization. There's several stakeholders. These are all important elements that we took into consideration. And so what resulted was a framework that fundamentally could be summarized in 5 pillars. Now, we're aware that there's a lot, even some in here, and you'll hear a little bit about web governance approaches from some of the presentations, and we're loving that. And there's a lot of other vendors out there that have their version of web governance or digital governance, and we applaud all of it. The more you shed light on this reality, we think, lifts the tide for all of us. We summarized our framework in these 5 pillars. So you have web governance foundation, you have privacy, security and risk, data and technology, content and experience, and digital transformation. And then I'll go into detail of what are the capabilities that underline each one of the dimensions in these pillars for you. First off, if you look at web governance foundation, this is all about the strategy and the operations and the ability to engage the right people with the right actions at the right time. You see capabilities of monitoring, you see defined workflows, you see ownership and accountability. And so this foundation layer we submit is what brings capability to the other 4 pillars. You can see the nature of this is pretty comprehensive. We tried to capture every angle that we could identify. When you go into the pillar of privacy, security, and risk, each one of those capabilities has matters of consent, which is super important, PII. When you talk about compliance validation, it's top of mind for organizations that want to keep their brands clean. You have all these matters about security, and there's a lot of these types of systems that would address this that isn't us. But again, I remind you, we wanted to take great care in making sure that this effort was inclusive of pretty much every angle you could think of relating to web governance. And then our confidence is that if we can shed a light on areas that need to be focused on, that you need to lean into, that either we would be able to recommend a partner or a solution, or you would be able to go and find that. But at least you would have the direction that you need to head. When you get into risk management, this is a lot about risk audits and making sure that we're looking for piggybacking, rogue, and hard-coded tag risks and geographic risks. And a lot of this capability in the monitoring is available in our platform, but a lot of the consulting around it or adjacent technologies, of course, we wouldn't cover. So the next pillar of data and technology It's all about what's happening on your web pages behind the scenes. Customers don't see these elements, but they power your ability to personalize the experience and track their experience and target them with the most optimal messaging. So this is behind the scenes there, and you can see the detailed dimensions of each one of those capabilities. When you look at the content and experience, this is all about what's happening on the front stage. All of the elements that the customer sees and experiences directly. So when you're concerned about what your website is imposing or doing to your customer, that's directly addressed here in the pillar of content and experience. When you look at digital transformation, this is considering whether you're making a major change or you're making a minor tweak, an update, or anything in between. There are many interdependencies in your web ecosystem. And the planning capability is about being able to determine all of those interdependencies and which of them will be impacted by a change. So it's about understanding which stakeholders are affected and how, and making sure that they're properly communicated with, they're not surprised. It's about validating to make sure that the intended change occurred and that there were no unintended or undesired changes or impacts. And so you validate that implementation. So at a really, really high level, that's what's included in this web governance maturity. Now, if you take a step back, Kyle went through an exercise and asked, what is your specific role? And this isn't 30 years ago when there was one steward over the whole entire web presence of an organization. We have roles that underlie in every one of these capabilities. And so if you were to participate in our assessment and our maturity model, it would be important to invite stewards or stakeholders in each one of these, as many of these different capabilities as possible, so that you get a perspective that's unique to them. And I actually don't want to get into the real detail of participating in the assessment and not, but I'm just trying to give you a high-level appreciation of the approach. Some stakeholders might have a subset of the entire question set because their role only relates in pointed ways. And others would be invited to take the whole entire comprehensive list of questions. But the output would be really, really valuable because it's all recorded. This is an assessment that is capabilities based, not ratings based. This is an assessment that's objective and not subjective. So participants respond with descriptive answers and not with personal judgments, if that makes sense. And then also in the process, it's important all of us here are in one way or another about affecting positive business outcomes to the business, right? Going back to what is web governance, it's making sure that that framework is aligned with the business strategies and desired outcomes. That's not me, is it? Nope. You're connected in here? Where was I? What was I saying, Brian? Before the assessment is taken, we actually collect some business outcomes because it's important that and business outcomes examples are click-through rates, bounce rates, conversion rates. It's a myriad of them. It's important for us to be able to, as we gain more and more completions in this process, that we can be more intelligent in connecting the performance or the responses of an organization to the business outcomes that they're seeing. And it puts us in a powerful position to then make guided recommendations. So the output of this exercise actually is to produce a report, and that report goes at a high-level overview score, and then it contains an individual score on every one of the capabilities in each of the dimensions of the 5 pillars. So it's actually really, really cool. And this is not an engagement that is weeks long and tens of thousands of dollars or $100,000 or whatever. This is actually not intended to be a revenue generator for us. This is something that we felt compelled to be able to bring to market to our customers that are looking for something that they can use as compelling material for their leadership to gain favor in budgets, to gain favor in resources, to gain favor in attention, to be something that's addressed at management meetings, and also to drive some passion behind the action or the remediation that is to be taken from the monitoring and the outcomes that are observed. And we've heard from several of you in this room that often the battle you're facing is that you're resource deficient and it's hard to get the attention. It's our humble opinion that if you go in with something like this and you can get some leadership to attend in the readout, they're going to be more bought in. I was talking to one of you here in the audience. It happens to be, I won't name names and stuff because it's that's their business, but they're very involved in a deep assessment with another organization, which we celebrate. But they were able to secure executive audience, and it spanned over 3 months, and it really set a roadmap for improvements in their organization for the coming year. And we love that. We're all about that. So this isn't something that we ever care to impose, but we would submit that it is a great tool to leverage if any of you are looking for an option to be able to recruit attention of your peers who are fellow stakeholders in the cause of the web and the whole website and the whole web ecosystem. You'll walk away with a wiser, more educated assessment of what your organization could lean into moving forward to move the needle and to drive better business outcomes. Admittedly, a lot of the recommendations that would come out of this exercise, again, are going to be bringing up areas of expertise or needed technologies or needed consulting or designed plans that wouldn't even be our services. And we would then propose that you pay attention to some of the partners that we might invite you to talk to because that would be their area of expertise. Okay, so coming back full circle, whether it is the ObservePoint framework of web governance or whether it is web governance initiated by another partner or vendor of yours or a self-driven initiative, it's critically important that you're able to communicate what's in it for the organization as you then go get the ear of your leadership. Soliciting resources and attention and helping them see the connected tissue between this more mature strategy and how it's going to drive customer acquisition, how it's going to drive loyalty, how it's going to promote your brand, how it's going to affect an impact on these changes, or on these business outcomes. So that's a high-level introduction to what we told you we were going to be working on a year ago. We spent the better part of the last 12 months refining that, and it's available, and we're excited about it. We're most excited in being able to help out in any way we can, and if that means putting something in your hands that helps you gain an audience and helps you drive a more strategic type of conversation in your organizations, then that's a huge win for you. There is actually a small taste of this that we would love to have everyone in here experience. This is not intended to be as comprehensive of an outcome, but if you go onto our website and you scroll down on our main page, you'll see a mini assessment, if you will, that you can take. And I'd like you to each take, if you're gonna screenshot that, well, you might be screenshotting this to save it, but you can go, I'd like you each take a few minutes and capture this QR code. We created this one because if you go to this one rather than the link on our website, our account development team isn't going to think you're a lead that they should follow up on and say, hey, you were interested in this. This will just jump through the collection of your personal information and go straight to the questions, the simple questions. So why don't you take a few minutes, grab that QR code, and go through the process. And let's see at a very high level, just to wet the whistle, what kind of recommendations it gives your organization. Chris, did you have something?
Yeah, as the guy holding an iPad up against the screen. With the initial assessment, when should we start asking for that? And then what frequency do you recommend that we have these assessments with our CSM?
That's a great question. The first half of your question is when's the right timing? I don't think there's a bad timing. We have one customer that just signed up, and they're taking the assessment now because they want the benchmark. They want that baseline of where they're at today, and they want to be able to illustrate the impact of some of their strategies, one of which included ObservePoint, but they wanted to be able to demonstrate that after 6 to 12 months of the change that they were able to affect in their organization. So it's really, really good to get a baseline measurement early in your maturity. But you may have been about this cause for some time now, the other stewards in your organization trying to bring on a more mature approach to web governance. This is at least a data point of where it stands today, based on the objective responses of as many peers as you can solicit participation from. And ideally, we don't think it's very effective if you don't have at least 6 to 8. We just had one complete it with 30, and it was awesome because we had a plethora of responsibilities, and some of them had a shallow question set, others were more involved, and it was wonderful. But our recommendation is that you at least get a data point from where you are today. If that's early in your perceived cycle of addressing web governance, great. You can measure the performance from the entire life cycle. But if it's late, then see what your results based on your peers' objective responses has produced to date. And then the second part of your question is how soon would you take it a second or a third time? And it's not an exact science of the number of months. Our recommendation is that with the guidelines or recommendations that will come from the assessment, pick the 2 or 3 of the top 5 recommendations that you're going to get as a result of this. Put it in that plan of how you're going to go act on those, implement those, and as soon as you discern that you have designed the plan, engaged in the plan, and you believe you've affected change, it would be appropriate to take that assessment again. Now, the example that I gave of one of our partner customers taking 3 months of a very thorough assessment with the executive team, you're not going to get that type of audience and buy-in and time commitment more than once a year, maybe every 2 or 3 years. This assessment's not that. This assessment is a 25 to 45 minute commitment of all the participants to go through the survey, go through the question set. It's probably about an hour of orientation to help them understand what the objective of the assessment is. And then at the end, it's a good hour or so commitment after our team has been able to go through the results, produce the report, concur on the guidelines or the recommendations, work with you to get alignment, and then we present a readout to the broader audience, preferably with some of your leadership involved so that they can get emotionally behind it. Does that help? Dylan?
Some people had issues with the QR code. You can access the assessment through the homepage of our website, scrolling down to the middle, like JD said. I think there's everyone accessing at the same time. There's some issue with it. So if you had any issues, you can find the assessment, the mini assessment JD referenced, on our homepage.
Yeah, and Kyle, in our questions, if they go through the web page and they give their name and phone number and stuff, is there a field they can say, EDGE participant, JD said, don't call me? Or EDGE participant, but I want you to call me? All right. If you get a call from one of our account development managers, give them a big hug. Tell them thank you. They're doing their job. Any other questions while some of you are going through this? Have you already seen the output delivered to you? Were some of you surprised by it? Obviously, this is pretty shallow, this one. This is more to open people's eyes to the fact that models exist and being inquisitive about it. But what is some of the results that it's produced for you? What has it advised you to focus on? Anyone want to volunteer? Sean's got a microphone back there.
Kyle, do we have some swag if somebody answers? So we have some.
We got someone right here.
All
What
right.
did it say?
Let me bring you a mic.
Yeah.
Managing. Oh, sorry. It says managing.
Managing?
Yeah.
Okay. Did it give any details on that?
Yeah, a list. Web governance, ownership, and accountability. There's a list. Goes
Okay.
on and on.
Yeah. So certain specifics under the general advisement of look at your management of the web governance, ownership, accountability, et cetera. Anybody get anything different from that?
I got a coordinating.
Coordinate? Okay. That's the level that you're at. And then what did it tell you to recommend or to focus on?
All the levels, pretty much. It gave a score about 50% you achieved in web governance and performance about 50%, and some levels at 75%. So I had a recommendation at all the levels.
So you're aware there's room for improvement,
Yes.
but there's probably a wide array of things that you could work on. And again, this is more to engage the mind of people who would be looking at some sort of an opinion, but really to solicit your ability to collaborate within your organization and get people to care about it, and let them know that whether it be ObservePoint or another model out there, there are models that exist. They'll come at varying expenses. We're not charging for this assessment that we're doing. Really, it is about us wanting to deliver value to customers that we've been observing now for years in giving them some direction on what they could work on and focus on. Okay. Any other questions before we move? Well,